It's cold brew season, and Trade has you covered for the warmer weather months. Sign up for a cold brew subscription and get coffees designed specifically for making cold brew delivered right to your door. But how do you make cold brew at home? Well, for a limited time, you get a Hario cold brewer with your subscription for absolutely free. That's a $30 value. Just pour, fill, and chill and have your own cold brew right at home. Plus, shipping is always free. Go to unitedwedrink.com/trade to start your subscription today. Better coffee is waiting for you with Trade. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, co-workers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another new episode of the United We Drink podcast right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Yarevich, and I'm here doing an intro by myself, and if you are a fan of this show, you know what that means. That means we have a guest on the show today. Yes, we have someone who is a longtime friend of the show. He's someone who has been a part of the craft beer world in South Florida for a very long time. Kevin and I have personally known him for what feels like forever in our careers. We have Adam Feingold on today. Adam started off as the owner of Bangin Banjo Brewing in Pompano Beach, a brewery that by name does not exist anymore, but he'll get into more of that a little later on. He is now the brewery team lead for Ollie, which is part of Next Glass. And we wanted to talk to him about being a former brewery owner whose brewery didn't shut down, who sold, divested, if you will, from the brewery that he opened up, and what all went through his mind with all of that. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into talking to Adam Feingold.
Our dipshit host shows up late.
Yeah, we're getting right into it.
I figured I should have just started recording at some point. We do things real professional like over here, Adam, if you haven't noticed.
Adam,
I love it.
It's been a day. So I came in hot by being late and solar flare and shitting on.
That's all good. I'll do you one over. I'm
Okay.
drinking a beer from Timmy Johnson, who brews in your state.
You're drinking some Barrel Theory, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that! I did a radio show with Timmy, and it was great because I used to always say that like one of us is the better brewer named Tim Johnson, and one of us is the more attractive brewer named Tim Johnson, and I'll let you determine who is which. And the reality is, I'm the answer to both. And Timmy, I hope you are listening. Because let's just remember, it took you like 6 years to grow your beard, and it's fine. It's very cute.
This is a great way. This is a great way to start a show by antagonizing just people that are not on the show.
Here.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, hey, if Timmy listens, that's great. And if he's hearing me roast him, even better. But more likely he doesn't listen, and then no harm, no foul, I think is the way that
Adam, is he a client?
He may or may not be a client.
He cannot confirm. He cannot confirm or deny. I like that Adam started this off by going into immediately, what are we drinking? So no introductions are necessary. I'm gonna take the bull by the horns, and I'm gonna follow our guest lead and say
the introduction is in
no. I know.
the thing.
I know. But
I don't know that I've been a co-host of this podcast for over a year, and every time I'm still like, "Are you gonna kick us off, Mike?" And then I always forget that when we have a guest.
What I'm drinking is the Breaking the Silence Pale Ale, which I talked with you guys about, I think, on the last episode. It was canned as of yesterday, and it's a kind of classic pale ale. It's drinking pretty well. I'm really proud of it, and it's going to be out. It will be out when anyone hears this, and hopefully we'll have some cases left over. But excited about this beer.
Tim, what are you having?
I want to go back to the barrel theory that who cares? I'm drinking Bell's. I got the Bell's Variety IPA pack. I don't want to say who cares. Like no one cares about Bell's. Like literally,
I do.
I say there's literally a reason I get the Bell's Variety IPA pack because
what's in the pack?
Change of Heart, Big Hearted. Obviously Two Hearted, and then what's Hazy
Hearted?
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you have a favorite?
For a very long time, Two Hearted was my Desert Island IPA. No questions asked. So
it still probably is on mine.
It's a great beer.
Anything with
Agreed.
heart in the name from Bell's, like it could be called Black Hearted. Oh, have they made a Cascadian? Oh, hey, Larry, if you're listening, Cascadian
Larry's not
IPA.
involved.
Larry's the wrong person.
I know, but hey,
Maddie Smooth has more pull probably at Bell's than Larry does.
I know. I'm just saying.
As a Michigander, I should make that beer. Get 3 reviews on Untapped, and then I can get a cease and desist letter from Bell's in 6 months when they make that beer and rightfully take the name back.
Well, also you are like your heart is very black, so it would make very much sense.
It's a medical condition. Thank you very much, and I don't want to be proud about it.
It's
I will not answer.
It's called being just like terrible as a person on the inside and out. Yeah.
I will not answer any questions about this, and I'd like to move on.
My heart is a normal color. My soul is black.
Mike, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Skillet from Burial, their donut stout. They ran a deal recently where you buy a pack from them and it was free shipping. So I was like, you know what? I got some money burning a hole in my pocket. So here you go. It was like 6 4-packs and 2 barrel-aged bottles for like $160 and free shipping. And I've always wanted to try this beer. I think it's 8% stout with like molasses, lactose, and coffee. And it's thick and it is delicious. Everything that I was hoping for from this beer. And then I have their rye IPA to back it up.
I do like that it's Burial, Skillet, and Donut, because when I die, I hope someone is frying up donuts in a skillet for me. Like, I think that all makes a ton of sense. So in other words, in about a week, because I'm that old, Mike, if you could come up here with the skillet and fry up some donuts, I think I'd appreciate that.
Can I carry that on to a plane? I would assume so. Because I like my skillet. I want to bring my own.
It's not a weapon. I mean, you could use it as a weapon, but it's not sharp.
It's certainly a weapon if you play Smash Bros. I mean, come on. So
that's true. That's true. Oh yeah. Frankly,
right?
I'm impressed there hasn't been more intellectual property been stolen from the Mario Kart, Mario
Oh, there
and
most
Luigi.
likely is.
Well, there is. I'm
look
just
at-
surprised there's not even more stolen from there, frankly.
There's plenty. I mean,
Look,
if you're
we
talking
probably
only
don't
beer
know
world,
about the
there.
small little place in fucking buttfuck Arkansas that did it because they brew on a 1-barrel system and
Well,
I-
to be fair, Buttfuck is also intellectually owned by Nintendo. I just want to make sure we understand
to
that
be-
Princess Buttfuck.
it's just over the river from Texarkana.
I was gonna.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that this is when Tim goes into this long diatribe about being on the wilderness trails in buttfuck Arkansas and all his favorite places to go and all the wonderful sights he's seen.
Well, they're back in the more backwoodsy Ozarks. Once you get down into Arkansas, you're more into the methy Ozark. Not that all of Missouri isn't methy, but down there is
How did we get to Missouri? Adam, you were
That's
going to
where
say
the
something?
Ozarks actually are.
I was going to say,
They're in Arkansas.
Sure, I think they're in SoCal, but the brewery
The
8-Bit
Ozarks?
Brewing does Mario Tart as like a
Mario
whole
Tart.
Mario Tart series. So I'm pretty sure it's them.
It's all been done.
and-
It's all been done.
It's all been done.
There's nothing unique, especially there's nothing unique in stealing IP. You just can't. An honest person just can't make a living stealing other people's intellectual property anymore, and it's just that's not the America I want to live in.
I've done it at my former brewery, so guilty as charged.
Speaking of your former brewery, let's get into the topic of this episode. Do you like that transition? I do. Adam, you owned and operated Bangin Banjos. I think Mike's probably going to had to talk about that in the intro. But what I'm really interested.
Sorry,
What up?
right there. I
Ozarks at
can't.
time.
You know I can't leave that joke alone. Come on.
So Adam is a longtime listener to the podcast. He's a friend of myself and Mike's because he lives in South Florida with us and has been in the beer scene here for a long time. And trying to get our friends on the podcast, we have to find really unique ways to do that. But I like the idea of talking about your particular journey because you owned and operated a brewery. You're currently working with Next Glass and doing stuff with Ollie, just like our friend Dustin Jeffers. But your path to get there is unique, at least to me, in the fact that you owned and operated a brewery, sold that brewery. It's still in operation now under a different name. And that is just something that we don't see very often. Most of the breweries closing in most of the breweries that are changing in South Florida and in Florida in general, they just go out of business. So give us a little rundown of what Bangin Banjos was to you, how you started that off. But I want to transition into your transition because I'm just fascinated by it.
Sure.
Let him answer one question before you ask 7 in a row there, Kevin.
No. I log them. So with AI,
he wrote them down.
Me the transcript, right? No. So Bangin Banjo. Gosh, it really does feel like a lifetime ago. But that idea was conceived, if you will, in Gainesville, Florida. Go Gators. We were my best friend and I, Matt, who co-owned it with me. Mike and Kevin, you guys know Matt, or at least you did in a former life. We were up in Gainesville, and for whatever reason, I think it was around the time Mellow Mushroom Del Rey opened. I was down here at the time, and I loved all the beer they had on tap, and I was like, man, this would be cool to open a brewery. And I had some hospitality management experience and went off to Gainesville and did Gainesville things, homebrewed, clubbed, and all that stuff. And I was like, you know what? We should open a brewery because my best friend and I had wanted to open a business. And originally we were thinking restaurant, but we went brewery. Kind of just showed up and opened a brewery in South Florida thinking that, hey, I was in Gainesville 7 years. Let's pick a catchy name. Let's make a nice tap room with an air conditioning because a brewery who is not named on this show didn't have one at the time, and we were like, if we have AC, if we have an AC, people will show. We saw how busy that brewery was. There'd be like 400 people sitting in like crappy plastic picnic chairs, and they were just printing cash in like 2014. And I was like, man, I want to run a business. I got into Bangin Banjo and that business, not to brew beer, even though that happened a lot more than I ever thought it would. But I got into run a brewery, believe it or not. So we opened in 2015 with 6 beers on tap. We were, I think, the first Goza in South Florida, at least. And that later ended up being this crazy thing. But I mean, Kevin, Mike, maybe Tim as well, you guys may or may not know. I know Kevin does the journey of opening and construction with the brewery and whatnot. And we were our own GCs for that, believe it or not. But yeah, we got open in July of 2015.
Yeah, I remember when Badger Hill was opening, like still having to pee in a porta potty for like the first 4 months of trying to open up the place. So yeah, I get that. I guess one thing that I think Kevin alluded to, I want to understand a little bit more though, is like what. Tell me your journey, I guess, into beer that made you even want to be dumb enough to open up a brewery. And I say dumb enough with all the love and respect that it is warranted, but you also know where I'm coming from. Like
absolutely,
you have to be a little dumb to do it.
So as crazy as this sounds, when I was in Gainesville, I was working for Aramark at the University of Florida Dining Services. And that for them was a flagship account. And I was in my early 20s and I was managing a few of their operations there. And I must have been putting in somewhere between 60 and 90 hours a week. And it was my first big boy job, if you will. And I was making pretty good money, low cost of living up there. But I was like, man, I could run a business. Like I could put the time in for this. And that kind of got my head spinning there. Now, I've always been a foodie. My best friend had always been a foodie. His name's Matt. So Matt and I, we used to, like, growing up, just like go out to eat. I love going out to eat. Unfortunately, I don't get to do that anymore because A, 2 kids under 5, and B, things are expensive. But and I was like, man, it would be great. I just found my way into beer, and I was just so encapsulated with all the flavors. And I went for my BJCP and I wanted to explore, and I love like perfecting things, right? And one of my favorite beers back then of all time, as crazy as it was, of course the name's escaping me right now. Was it Bellhaven, the Scottish ale?
The Wee Heavy?
I think it was Scottish ale on on Nitro.
Yeah, I didn't have it on Nitro, but back then it was in bottles. Was Bellhaven and Zivich, a Baltic Porter, one of the best ever. It was like one of the best ways you can drink an 8% beer for like $2, and it was just beautifully crafted. I don't know if you can still get it at a Total. And then just IPAs. I just kept getting deeper and deeper with that.
So you got into several different beer styles and loved culinary aspects of it and wanted to craft flavors, which is how a lot of us got into it. I think it'd be interesting for the people listening, because you talked about Bangin Banjo. What was the size of the facility, and kind of like what were you hoping? I mean, listen, we all know what we're hoping to do. We're hoping to get millions of dollars and be able to feed our families, right? But
right.
what was the goal for you when you were opening up Bangin Banjos and looking at the project as a whole?
Yeah, before you answer that, I kind of wanted to like caveat on what Kevin said, is that like we all know what we're thinking when we open, but some people open up with like a 3-barrel system, thinking they're going to be a 50-barrel system. Some people open up with a 50-barrel system, thinking this is what's going to happen. Like, where were you in that journey?
Oh man, I cringe at this thought now, just looking back at it. Matt and I were very, very technical in our approach. I was BJCP back then, which I cared a lot about. No one else did, of course. But for me, just hitting things to style, and for Matt, that was important to us. We were a 3-barrel that didn't want to, experiment nearly as much as you would think. We wanted a 3-barrel. To start small and grow our way into distribution and just really nail technical styles. That's how we wanted to approach it.
So you opened up in 1996 is what I'm hearing, based off of that approach.
Now, here's the crazy part. Right? We actually had a decent-sized tap room in a 5,000 square foot facility. So we had about 70% of the space was dedicated to production, and we had about 3,000 square feet in the tap room. A lot of live wood. I mean, I thought it was a very nice tap room.
It was
It
nice tap room. Yeah.
reminiscent of like Colorado tap rooms, which I've never been to, unfortunately. But we went in like 3 barrel, like, yeah, we're gonna nail this. Just brewing, an East Coast style IPA, which I enjoyed, but at the time people didn't stop giving a shit about, and an amber ale, and we just had this plan, and part of the way through we realized we're a 3 barrel brewery. Like, what are we doing trying to compete with 10, 15, 20, 30 barrel breweries that are just spitting, cranking beer out,
And you were doing distro, right? At the time, you were doing you were doing a distro and a tap room with a 3 barrel system, which
Distro with a 3 barrel.
yeah,
Which you had 7s and 15s for your FVs.
We had 3s and 10s, so we were triple
10s. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, we had we had 5 3s and 3 10s that were unis. And the way it actually worked out really well for us in hindsight. I mean, the double brewing and triple brewing sucked, but we were able to fill the 10s, can out of them for the tap room, which was fantastic. We were able to triple fill the 10s and do like 4 to 6 barrels at a time. I mean, I feel like for what we did our technical stuff well, and we did enough of the hype stuff to bring that group in without like, having people line up, if that makes sense. Like, we weren't, the sexy brewery that everyone was like, oh my God, what are they releasing? But they're like, hey, they make cheaper stouts that I don't have to wait outside for, are, 80 to 90% as good as, some competitors who may or may not still exist in Miami. So.
No, Adam, and don't take this the wrong way. That sounds.
Say it. Just say it. Just say it. It's a purely stupid idea. In retrospect,
No, I wasn't gonna say stupid, but I was gonna be like, that's aggressive is probably the word that I was going to use, which is maybe just a nicer way, a Minnesota nice way of saying stupid. Maybe you're right, but that
don't give me the bless your heart spiel. Tim's sorry. The truth of the matter is that we had a limited amount of money.
Yeah,
we opened for less than $250,000. If you can believe, a lot of that loans. And Mike and Kevin, you guys saw what that place looked like.
I was just complaining earlier that I'm poor. I don't even think $250,000 would even get me out of debt. Like,
I have an interesting.
Do you open a brewery with that?
Yeah. I have an interesting perspective on this because, Adam, you've actually shown me the business plan that you put together for that brewery.
Really?
And it's just because I had an idea of a brewery at one point, and Adam was very helpful to that idea that never came to fruition, probably for the best. But when going over it, it was kind of funny to see things in the plan that didn't happen. Like, I think you had planned for a 7-barrel system. You planned for a bigger system than what you actually.
You're gonna double in size in the first year from 3.5.
No. That was the opening.
We were going to open. We part of the way through our construction, we essentially needed to raise more money. So we, where do you make cuts? Where do you? And that's the whole thing. I think overall we had the right approach in mindset, but the lack of business knowledge really, really hurt us. I mean, I joke about this with Matt all the time. If we had just taken that money, whether loaned our money, all the money we got, dropped it in Bitcoin, we could be losing so much money by owning a brewery right now. Instead, we just lost a little bit.
No. Adam, like literally, like the theme of my life is living in hindsight. So I entirely get
Captain Hindsight.
Captain Hindsight.
I get what you're saying, but so again, so what year was this when you guys started this?
We opened in 2015. We signed a lease in 2014 when warehouse breweries were still cool. That ended right around the time we opened.
Well, In fairness, they're still not cool, and they never really were cool. But I don't even know if they ever really were.
It was a very forced cool. It was like,
Yeah.
hey, look at us, we're over here, we're
2011.
cool, because we can't afford real estate in the high walkability demand places.
But it's also because you can't get zoning there. I mean, there it's multiple reasons why that is. I mean, our rent in Boca in the warehouse space is ridiculous. But anyway, what I think, Adam, you got into, and I'd been brewing in South Florida for several years before that, but Barrel of Monks was only about a year old, probably, or
Not
6
even.
months old when you guys came in for the first time, and I met you for the first time in the tap room, and you had multiple partners in there in the very beginning that I remember. And you were nice enough, and when you were first opening up, I came over, you showed me around the brewery while you're putting stuff together. And I think one of the things that I noticed now looking back is that we just had a very immature market, and anyone getting into it just didn't really know what to expect. We thought we could do a 3-barrel system and do distro and make money off of it. And because there weren't a lot of professionals from like outside of the industry and more mature markets that were flooding into our market to slap us on the hand and go, yeah, don't do that. Like, be the local guys that just sell out of your tap room and find a way to make that work. And I think that was just, now we have those. Are people listening to us? Probably not, because there's still people doing it, and they'll be closed in a few years.
Well, and that was one of the reasons why I asked like what year this was, right? Like I know, like I play the fancy mature brewery market Minnesota bullshit. I like to complain and rip on Florida. But I do want to, like, I want to understand like that time frame, like what were your competitors doing? Where did you see yourself? Like what did you think was the growth of the market? Because you were, like, to be fair, whether you know it or not, you were opening up a brewery in a market that is very
young. It was young.
Atypical, I guess, right? Like you talk about not making it to Denver, and I never want to compare anyone to Denver.
Was 26 Degree open yet when you guys opened?
They opened 2 months after we did. So I actually have a really good memory of every brewery that opened up that year. And and I remember this because I'm like, wow, a lot of breweries are opening, and I used to visit every single one that opened. But that year that we opened, MIA, Wakefield, Copper Point, Barrel of Monks, Devour, 26 Degree, and Civil Society all open. And those are the ones that I know of. It's possible I may have forgotten.
That is like a who's who of South Florida breweries for most, like, for that time.
Plus Copper Point and Barrel of Monks are also included on the list. Yeah, you're right.
Both here and gone for some of those breweries.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that I really wanted to talk about were with your transition, and I kind of alluded this in my first question that Tim, chastised for being a little bit too long-winded, is like your experience. Listen, we could probably talk all day about what you wanted to do, what you wanted to accomplish, and all those things. But your unique experiences, at some point, you wanted to get out, and most places just close. They just close down. And by the way, every place says, and by the way, that said by the way twice in like 2 sentences back to back. It sounds terrible.
Kevin,
but
speaking of long-winded, get on with it, Kevin.
I don't need your negative comments, Tim. I can insult myself. Thank you very much, and I do, and I will again. When and if Barrel of Monks closes down, we certainly will say it's because of the rent, and we're going to try to move somewhere else, and then we're just never going to. But people will forget that because we can't just say we couldn't make it work and the business had to close. But you pivoted and sold, which almost no one in this market does. I'm sure they do at other markets. So I really want to get into that. I want to hear about when you got to your breaking point and how that manifested itself.
So that goes a little farther back. So I'd say the best year for Bangin Banjo was 2018. And 2019 was the year Matt and I both got married, kid was on the way, life started to happen, and things started to slow down a little bit in 2019. And we weren't even thinking, COVID wasn't an issue yet. So
Like,
before I
did
jump
you
into
just
the
say life
story piece,
slows down with kids on the way? Because I kind of feel
no,
like,
no, 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 no,
oh,
no.
okay.
But the brewery world was kind of slow. Tasting rooms are getting slower. Things are getting a little more competitive. And I had a few sayings that I always said when we first opened the brewery back in Minnesota world in 2006. You only needed good finances, good beer, or a good location. You had one of those, your brewery was going to be a
I don't
rock
even
star.
think you needed it. Like,
Right around the time we opened,
you needed
you
half of
only
those. Yeah.
needed two of the three to survive. Now, in a mature market, 2019 and above, I think three is mandatory, right? So, with that being said, and me just kind of having a business mindset is I've always, with every approach I've had and everything I've done, every project I've taken on, I look at exit strategy. And this is something I've always had, even when I opened Banjo, and I was going to do this the rest of my life, right? I was going to run a brewery. I didn't need to do anything else. This was it, right? Still, it was like, well, things happen, right? So we generally had pretty good financials, even though Matt wasn't getting paid. We were, for the most part, in the black, and we kept pretty good books, and we were on top of our stuff. So towards the end of 2019, we're like, all right, like let's just keep going and doing, and COVID kind of happened, right? And we're like, okay,
Kind of. Yeah.
all right, we've talked about it a little bit, like direction and different things and whatnot, and now it is like, what's going to happen? We can't jeopardize our families. What's going to happen here? We don't want to be stuck owing a lot of money. Let's go ahead and see like what can happen with that, right? And one thing that happens to a lot of owners, and I see it all the time in a lot of businesses, people in new leadership and management positions, they say, if I can only just do insert thing here, then insert thing here. You cannot run your
Title of my
business
sex
just
tape. Yeah.
hoping you can get done with one thing just so you can work on something else, because there's always something, right? That's just life. And Banjo and that whole experience taught me to not just have that as my light at the end of the tunnel, right? If we could just sell 3 more kegs or run this event or make this much money, right? Then we can go ahead and buy this or do that, or, but I digress. We ended up kind of quietly just putting ourselves up for sale, working with a broker. I knew a broker. His name is Randy. He's absolutely fantastic guy. And we were shopping around a little bit. I mean, right as the pandemic started, right? What we valued ourselves, initially, and then like, hey, it's a pandemic. You're not making the money based on your 2019 and 2018 financials anymore. We were just hoping to, break even, let alone make money. And eventually, after just random stuff, and this is May, June, July, we met some people, nothing serious. We were approached by someone who was more interested in investing rather than buying. And he's like, hey, this is something I wanted to do. He aligned with a bunch of things. And I was like, you know what? Like, we never had a money person or someone with, a bank account that could really, and, I was like, let's give this a shot. So him and his group, they bought in 75%. So like we still owned a little bit at the time and rebranded and everything and whatnot. And eventually I just kind of hit a point like in between all that. I'm like, with COVID and, those feelings that I had at the beginning of COVID kind of came back. And I was just like, you know what? This has run its course. And I ended up exiting. I ended up, ended up having to sell the rest of my shares and everything of that sort and got out. And, navigating that brokerage process, I think a lot of success we had and why we had a lot of suitors is because we had good numbers. We jumped right into that and we had a plan in place prior to even like, hey, let's pull a trigger on this kind of thing. So we just always try to be financially savvy.
So, Adam, if I can call you out for something for 1 second, is when we first started talking about this, you said that you and your partners weren't uh, didn't know how to run a business, and then you immediately jumped into. We talked about an exit strategy. We talked about these long-term goals, like. I know so many breweries up here that are like run by MBAs and lawyers and whatever, who don't have the long term thinking that what you're describing right now is. You did have an exit strategy. You did have and like maybe the day to day what like right size tank, like no one, dude, like every 5 minutes the right size brew system changes, right? Like that isn't the secret sauce to
The
running
how
a
many
business, right?
right, the how many taps do you open with
Yeah,
conversation, right?
Kevin and I have talked about this a lot, right? Like as smart and as pretty as Kevin is, uh yeah, no, thank you, Kevin, for on a podcast and audio for showing off your hair. Which
That was for you guys. That's not for everybody
yeah,
else.
I know,
I was amused.
I got a little excited. But the reality is for all the things that you were saying that you weren't doing right from a maybe quote unquote brewery perspective, you were doing all the right things from a business perspective. And I think
Correct.
that's to me is maybe the cooler story there. So like when Kevin
Well,
kind
so,
of talked about bringing you on here, like I want to understand that. Like where did you get that maybe? So you can sit here and tease, we didn't know what we were doing.
yeah, so
You did.
right. So I mean, and it's not all me, right? My business partner Matt. I mean, he wasn't full time, but
No,
we
no,
talk
no,
about the
no. Just
brewery
take all
every
the
day.
take all the credit. It's easier that
I
way,
can't. It's not on my blood. But
dude.
the
I'm the third host on United We Drink, and I still tell people this is my podcast, so it's fine.
so the thing
I'm going to
is
need you to
that
stop doing that, Tim.
I when I worked for Airmark, they taught me a lot. They invested a lot in me as far as how to run a business, how to look at numbers, how to do a lot in that regard. I think even if we didn't get the brewery part, like you were saying, 100% or 70% or 50%, I think we did a lot of things right. I really, really do. We also did a lot of things wrong. We did make plenty of financial mistakes as well. We got in the deep end a couple times on things, but
Well,
we always
you'd be the only brewery to do that.
but we learn from our mistakes, and that's something that I think a lot of people get stuck in their pride and their ego. And even like now when I'm talking to the customers I work with now that are opening breweries and whatnot, I always like learning the reasons for opening a brewery. That's something that I just value as part of the conversation. And like I'm someone, I kind of get very emotionally invested in every single thing that I do, to a fault sometimes. And
I played a
with
game of Uno with you, and you got fucking angry about it. Yeah, I
yeah,
get it.
so angry. I just flipped the table over. But going into the business
Just
stuff
yeeted the
there,
thing. Yeah, no.
I just we wanted to strive for perfection and good finances. We ran our little 3 barrel brewery like it was a corporate business. Like it was a 20,000 barrel a year operation. My spreadsheets that I used, I mean, I could pull up costs on anything. I had a KPI and metric for just about anything you could possibly need a KPI or metric for, probably to a fault. I'm pretty good with Excel and spreadsheets and stuff. So I mean, we drilled down into stuff. And I mean, instead of sitting around, Matt and I, like smoking cigars, talking about what we wanted to do once we open a brewery, we'd sit around, smelling the mash in the morning, just being like, hey, what can we do to improve? What can we do to just like, and I have a saying, no 0 days, right? Just no 0 days. Every day I would walk in there. What can I do to improve something? Whether it's a number, a process, dialing in finance, and it's just something that like I don't know. I guess it's just how I/we are wired, and suddenly we're in this situation where hey, we either lose money and owe a lot of money, or we have to close or something. And suddenly our financials look pretty good for a small business. A lot of potential, a lot of space. I mean, profitable for a few years, low price. Someone can get in now, right. Who
Well,
knows how long the
it's
pandemic's gonna last? Like,
it's very refreshing to hear that, because when we talk about this in the industry, we make fun of it a lot of the hey, my mom loves my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, maybe I should open up a deli type of thing.
right.
Like that's the way that works, right? And so when you sit here with your modesty and talk about, we didn't really know what we were doing, you guys had a smarter head on your shoulders than maybe 90% of your peers.
I
I
appreciate that. I,
my Kevin, do you see what I'm saying? Like, from an outsider perspective, I see it as like a smarter. It's not just because like we always joke about the homebrew turn professional brewer culture, like that bullshit, right? Uh, to
and I
listen
was
to,
one of them. I never worked professionally at any brewery beforehand. I
but
just,
I don't care about working at a brewery. I care about like understanding how to make a business
right.
work.
And that is something, and as Kevin and Mike have told you, I got a lot of help opening the brewery. I always tell a story about how Matt and I had met Kevin when Barrel and Monks opened, and he gave us our number, very friendly at the time. He wasn't that bitter yet. And and we were opening, and we were still setting stuff up, and like the internet, right? You don't know the right questions to ask, even though the answers exist, right? So we call Kevin up, and he shows up, he walks in, and suddenly he just whips out a small flashlight and is starting to look at our tanks, and Matt and I are like, holy fuck, we need all these tools and stuff, like what are we doing? And right, and he's just feeding us all this information, and Matt and I are just looking at each other like, all right, we need this and that, and and you don't know what you don't know, right? But like when it comes to like business stuff, you have to, it's a business, right? And like if you're a home brewer and you want to open a brewery, why do you want to run a business so bad? It's one thing, make whatever you want. I've had some home brews that are absolutely phenomenal and amazing, but why do you want to run a business, right? And that's the question. Not why do you want to open a brewery, why do you want a business, right?
One of the first things I
That's
learned
like that should be on a fucking banner. Like
it is. Well, because like one of the first things I learned in this business is there's a difference between liking the product and running a business. Like those are two
Yes.
entirely different things, right? Like,
Mhm.
and like I should be smart enough to know this, right? Like when I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, the CEO of Buffalo Wild Wings was very well respected throughout the business world and didn't give two shits about wings. Like there is some of that. I think there's just something kind of niche about like a more of a cottage industry, right? So you talk about, your peers, you talk about like Barrel of Monks, which I've never told Kevin this because I never want him to feel good about himself, is that there are very few smaller breweries in Florida that I knew of. I knew of Barrel of Monks before I knew Kevin. I knew of Barrel of Monks before Joel worked there. I don't want him to feel good about himself, but
I still don't.
well, good, you shouldn't. But the reality is that you're now into this space of, because particularly down there in the southeast, and I will say this, knowing Kevin, knowing Mike, knowing Joel, I know that like the amount of money that is necessarily in the southeast, for instance, that you definitely have a lot of brewery owners that don't give two shits about beer. That, or like the joke
Well,
that
the,
Joel and Mike gonna make about storing the boat in the back or whatever. But what
yeah,
you have, right, is kind of you are talking to, even though I hesitate to call them Midwestern boys because they're old, they're not boys now. But you are talking to Midwestern guys, so you have like a Midwestern kind of ethos in a market, or maybe that didn't
it didn't
align.
pick
Is that
up.
is
I
that
mean,
fair?
yeah, no, I mean, I'm wearing my Be Local shirt. I living in Gainesville, Florida, it's this little pocket in Florida, right? I always like to joke that Gainesville is almost like a San Francisco of Florida. It's a very, very blue area. University of Florida is there. It's very community driven. I mean, the Gator Nation, if you will, I mean, it is strong, right? And living up there, I learned a lot about community and just, just like almost like the your neighbors, just having this family aspect, and everything is a little business up there, and a lot's changed since then. A lot of chains have come in bigger places, for better or worse. I'm not up there, I couldn't tell you, but I wanted to bring a piece of that down to South Florida. And I honestly, one thing I always loved about the brewery business was the community aspect. I truly, truly did. And you just don't see that in South Florida. Every brewery I go to in every other state, I see it. I see the camaraderie. I mean, you get a few people, right, that are like, oh, this brewery is my Cheers bar. But I mean, whether I'm in, Jersey or New York or North Carolina or Georgia, the vibe is completely different. Chicago. I've never been to Minnesota, unfortunately. I'd love to go, but everyone says that I was born in the. I lived in the wrong state.
Side note, you're always welcome in Minnesota. I've also told these other two guys on here, and they've yet to make it happen.
As the mayor of Minnesota, Tim is inviting you and saying you are welcome in his state that he owns and operates, which I think is an important
He's the
aspect.
president of Minnesota.
I'm sorry. I apologize, Mike. Thank you for being more accurate.
Are you sure he's not the assistant to the assistant president of Minnesota?
I'm lucky to be the regional comptroller.
Assistant to the regional manager. So Mike,
I have some
please.
questions.
Jump in.
Drop.
So I find it like somewhat crazy. First reaction is crazy to the fact that okay, you had a really successful 2018, and then it's like we should start thinking about getting out of this. It's, I mean, it makes
refreshing,
total sense.
Quite honestly,
it makes total sense and is refreshing to hear. But some part of my brain is still saying that is nuts. But it's
success.
It is great from a personal standpoint that you were thinking about family, you were thinking about future. But what I didn't know in the whole thing was I knew that you had sold and that the brewery rebranded to a different name. I didn't know you were still involved at that point.
I helped with that rebranding.
You were still involved then. Okay. Yeah.
So I want to know what your feelings were towards rebranding a business that you were no longer the majority owner on, that had your hands completely all over it. And now someone comes in there, you have new people who are more owners and being like, hey, we want to rebrand. What was your thought process going through all of that?
Before you answer that, can you explain the existing brand? I guess maybe I want to know the context for both. So, it's a great question, Mike. I don't want to cut you off. I just want to understand all of.
Yeah, because we haven't said that Pompano Beach.
So Bangin Banjo, inspired from South Florida. I love music. I love all music. I mean, bluegrass is the easy one, right? But I mean, I'm going to Warped Tour in Orlando, November, so I'm looking forward to that. The whole emo, rock, punk, metal, acoustic, classic. I mean, I listen to nearly everything. I really do.
But atheists have no hymns. Yeah.
But I wanted to take a piece of the South and bring it to South Florida. I wanted to carve out my little wedge of Pompano Beach there and say, hey, let's create a place with a community. Something that had that Midwestern charm, something that had a good feel and a good vibe. A lot of people always joked, they'd pull up to Pompano and our brewery and be like, what the heck? And you walk in and you're not in South Florida for a minute anymore. I kind of achieved my goal there. And the goal with the brand was to just be memorable, right? Be different. And one thing, there are definitely regrets in some ways with certain things, but, we could have leaned into it more. But again, I'm not a marketing and branding person. Sure, I know way more now than I ever could have hoped to imagine, but I really wanted a slice of the South down here in South Florida. Now, with that, there we were. I knew that the new owner wanted to come in and invest, and he said it didn't resonate with him. And Matt and I had discussed about rebranding before. We never wanted to because we had reputation. I'd like to think we had a good reputation, Kevin and Mike. I mean, you guys would speak to that better than I could me just being biased. But we never wanted to start from scratch with that. With the new owner in, and I honestly like bittersweet, but I was for it. I knew that if we were gonna infuse, get new equipment, grow this place. The name had to change because we weren't going to be the small brewery that opened this place in 2015. We needed to grow. We needed to be bigger. And, again, part of me, it was like, like when your kid kind of yells back at you for something and you're like, I got you to where you are now. But like, if they're right about something, like, you bite your lip, and you're like, you're not wrong, right? And I was for it. I helped guide that process, and Bangin Banjo. I joke every once in a while that I should try to buy that brand back because it's dead. The new ownership, they still own that as part of the IP and everything. And I don't know what I would do with it, but for a long time, that brand was my baby. So,
I mean, you carry a lot of, and again, Kevin and Mike, I apologize. Adam, I don't, so I have a lot more questions. And maybe you do have questions, but maybe you should have asked them in private because you should be a better friend. Is all I'm saying. I guess when you talk about this, you come across with a lot of humility with all of this, which blows my mind.
well, go ahead. And
No. I'm honestly, maybe this is a question for Kevin and Mike. When you see what Adam has done with a brand that he's nurtured from baby to handing off, right? Like sometimes it's hard to hand off a brand, right? And he's handed off a brand quite successfully. Frankly, how do you guys, when you guys see what he's done? Adam, maybe this is not a question for you at all. Kevin, I'll start with you. What do you see when you see that kind of brand handoff? Because that's a bigger question, I think.
I don't think I can answer that. I don't see. I wasn't aware, honestly, that Adam was still a part of the company when Pompano Beach Brewing Company was born. So, I mean, what I see when we're talking about this is that I'm impressed by your business acumen and the way that you looked at your business and tried to balance being a conscious person trying to make good products with trying to make money and trying to have people on the payroll and allow them to feed their families, which is so important. But no, I mean, I'm learning a lot about your journey there. And I'm still just kind of, Tim, you have questions, which leads to my questions where I want to ask questions about, for Adam, about, what it feels like to see that brewery now still operating when you now have stepped completely away from it and going, well, this is not my baby anymore, but yet the bones are still there.
What year
I don't
did
know,
you
Mike,
fully divest?
I fully divested. I mean, if you want to get technical, I fully divested in 2022, but I was out in 2021 for the sake of.
Okay.
So let's just say 2021 for the sake of. I want nothing more than their success. I truly, truly mean that. With that being said, when I left, it was very emotional and difficult, more than I'll willing to probably admit, not even openly, but to myself. Craft beer was dead to me for about 2 years. I joke that Dustin Jeffers kind of saved me from myself for craft beer, just doing what I'm doing now and everything of that sort, working with Nextglass and Ollie. But it makes me think of that scene from what is it? Ocean's 11-13. Then when I forgot Don Cheadle's character was writing letters to the guy's character was, and he's like, "You brought me back," right? And like part of me like knew I had done the right thing in a lot of ways. I'd done the wrong thing in a lot of ways. I knew, like we did some things right, but we also made plenty of mistakes as well. And, it was really, really hard, right? Like it just like much, much harder than you can imagine because, I mean, it's one thing you close, right? You close, it didn't work, right? We managed to get out, sell, whatever you want to call it, like we tried a bunch of different things. And again, I made a choice to step away. I could have stayed on, at some point, and
because when you tell this story, it doesn't seem to me like, especially because we are in an environment now. We've talked over the last 6 months about breweries closing. To me, your story isn't a
sad story.
Yes, it's not, for lack of a better term, a failure. It's an
evolution.
It's a next chapter, right?
I told Matt at the very beginning. I told him when we opened Bangin Banjo, my greatest fear with Bangin Banjo is that we would be just barely successful, right? Paycheck to paycheck, not growing, not doing poorly, but being just barely successful. And that more or less happened. On the surface, I think we were more successful than that. But if you look solely at the numbers, I mean, yeah, we were profitable. We did things well. There's room. But I felt like we were just barely successful. And that leads to burnout when you're killing yourself, right? I am in a very unique position with what I do, to know that I knew nothing, right? I work with, and Timmy, just to give you some insight. So I work for Nextglass on our Ollie team. So Ollie is a brewery RP, and my role as the brewery team lead is I manage our support and implementation. So I've onboarded almost 200 different breweries into Ollie and learned about their businesses, learned about their products, learned about their stories. And, my approach to my story now is so different because I realized, I didn't freaking know shit about anything, and like what I did know was great. But I mean, just like, if I can rewind, I regret nothing. But I mean, I always joke, right? If someone were to time travel, would you change anything? Are you sad right now? I mean, maybe for some people, absolutely. But like it's just wild, right? Because I see people that I'm like, wow, you're amazing, this, that, and I'm like, wow, I somehow opened a 3-barrel brewery and got out on my terms, and we were not losing too much money for 7 years. It's wild.
Yeah. That is still the most mind blowing aspect to me, frankly, is that you took a 3-barrel brewery and did what you did with it. Again, not like a judgment call on the size or whatever. Like, but you have a lot more savvy, I think, than you give yourself credit for.
So you said something earlier, Adam, that resonated with me, and it's something that I feel like a lot of brewery owners who are passionate about brewing don't consider, and that is that you are a business. You have people who work for you, who rely on you for an income to keep their lives going,
and they get paid on passion.
Trying to make your business successful for your employees, for them to be able to make livings, for everyone involved to be able to make livings. I feel like it gets lost with some people, like even the most passionate people, the people who like brewer owners, people who are owners of breweries that are brewers. Like, I feel like they lose that sometimes, and thoughts of like, I need to do this because I'm I am the one who is the driving force behind this, but like, yo, you got people who keep the lights on here, who serve the beers, who cellar the beers, who sell the beers. Like all those people rely on you, and doing whatever you can to make the place successful so that everyone can stay employed and whatnot. I feel like it's lost sometimes because and especially going to that rebranding, you're like thinking about like should we rebrand for the betterment of this whole company, for everyone here? Because while this is important to me, this name, it doesn't help them possibly in the long run. I have to tip my hat to you for that, because like it takes a lot to get past ego a lot of times, and I really commend you for something like that.
Well, thank you first and foremost. And like I said, I didn't get into the brewery for the brand. I didn't get into it for me to brew, right? So think about that. The reasons I got into Bangin Banjo and opened that place up is because I wanted to manage a brewery. Well, a lot of people who get into the brewery business get in because they want to brew beer or they want to have a cool place to hang out, right? When you really think about it, maybe more
Yeah.
so the earlier
That's
days
true.
with the cool place to hang out. But a lot of people are like, man, I brew this beer. All my neighbors say it's great. Or I've worked at 7 different breweries, honing my craft. I'm one of the best breweries in my region. I've got support. Everything I brew is wonderful. It's time for me to open my own brewery, right? And I mean, again, I can't blame someone for doing that. It's it's the chef who wants to open a restaurant who, finds himself not cooking because they're busy running a business. I wanted to run the business from the get-go. And I think that's something that kind of gets overlooked. When you look at breweries and whatnot, like why people get into it. And I know I said this a little earlier, and I just knew, no matter how much it hurt, in the long run, that was the better decision, right? You have to be able to see the forest for the trees. I mean, Copper Point, you guys just made a decision on your beer brands, and I pay attention to these things because I'm about 10 minutes away, and I think it'll work out for you. I mean, Barrel of Monks, I never thought I would see the bill in the light of day pouring a IPA from his taps, and here you are, Verdant Embrace, beautiful beer. I've always said that Barrel of Monks is one of my favorite breweries in the state. And given I haven't been as deep in the brand, but I used to compare the Bangin Banjo brand to what's everyone else doing, right? What are these guys doing? What are they doing that we can do? And I always said that Barrel of Monks had fantastic branding, and you guys stuck to your guns on a lot of stuff. And I think it worked until it didn't, right? And that's kind of how it is. And you have to be able to take a step back and just be like, what do we need to do that will get us to the next step, and 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And something that I always learned to do was have a 30-day plan, a 90-day plan, a 180-day plan, and a 1-year plan, right? Just write some goals on there for those. They don't have to be fancy goals. Even reading, I read Bob Iger's book, and of course it was after Banjo I read it, but something he said resonates me with this to this day is that never have more than 2 priorities. If you have more than 2, it's no longer a priority. It just gets lost in everything else. And I was like, that's a really, really good point. When you're running a business, you should just have, 2, maybe 3 things that this is what we need to focus on and move on. And, in some sort of way, I feel like we kind of had an approach like that. And, with even the number of brewery closings that there are a lot of breweries still growing significantly. And I think part of that is the people that got in for the wrong reasons, even if they're successful from the outside, and given, environmental factors, force majeure, whatever you want to call it, acts of God, rent tripling, quadrupling, whatever it is. I think a lot of people are like, running a business is hard, right? Like it just is. And if you're not up for it, it's hard to know what you don't know.
Adam, you just said a mouthful, and I think more people in our industry should have the kind of perspective that you have brought into your business and have taken out of the brewing business. I have one statement and one question. The statement is, do you want to replace me in running Barrel of Monks Brewing? Because I think you might do a better job. That's a statement. Just we'll talk about that off air. The question is, so of the brands that are still made by Pompano Beach Brewing Company, are any of those brands, they might have a different name, but are they, I know you weren't the brewer, right? But are they your recipes? And is there any buy-in to that particular brand that you think about?
I believe because the brewer who's there is a very good friend of mine. I got him hired there when we first expanded Pompano. I said, "This is the brewer I want." He's the brewer. He's low key one of the best brewers in the area. He's still there. I brought him in when I was there, and I talked to him often. And yeah, he would tell you if you talk to him. I'll coach him on ideas, and I want him to be nothing more than successful. And there are a couple. He's made some changes to some of them. I don't know. I think they still have the toasted coconut cream ale, which I hate coconut, and I hate coconut in beverages. But that beer ended up being one of our best sellers, and I believe it's one of the best sellers for them still. Moodoo Voodoo, which was our milk stout, I believe the brewer upped the ABV on it and kind of changed the recipe to make it for his way, and supposedly it's selling better. That's great. Everything else, I think he's played around with, but they're just a different brewery now. He focuses more on IPAs. He does Berliner style sours, whereas I did the Gozes. I mean, it's just a different brewery now, for better or worse, right? But there were a couple. When we first rebranded, we did change some names of stuff, but eventually it just was decided, I believe, that to go a different direction. I don't know the specifics because I was essentially out at that point.
So you and I have different experiences from our jobs at these breweries. I mean, you were an owner, I was a brewer, but I'm gonna kind of draw a parallel with Funky for me, is that I still look at Hop Gun, that I haven't even had one in quite a while, and I see them on the shelf and I still have a little bit of pride in it, even though I guarantee the recipe is not the recipe that I made, and the hop bill is probably not the hop bill that I put together, but I still feel like I brewed the first batch of that, right? So I have this when I see it doing well or I see it on draft, part of me still has this little bit of oh yeah, okay, you might not have Waypoint IPA on, but okay, you have that one beer that I had this small little sliver of influence in. Is there any pride when if you see that beer out there in the market?
Yeah, I would say so. When I see Pompano Beach somewhere, again, it's not Bangin Banjo, but a part of me is I helped that product get there, right? And the thing is something that was said to me by the owner when I was leaving. They threw a going away party for me, a surprise party for me. Little did I know. And he said, you've influenced every atom of this building, right? Pun intended. And to some degree, he's absolutely correct. Where I had my touch on absolutely everything. So there is a sense of pride there. As you haven't already guessed by now, I try to keep my ego, tempered. I used to be very, very arrogant when I was much, much younger, well before the brewery days. And when I drink too much, I can get a little arrogant sometimes. But for the most part, there is that sense of pride, like you said, with Hop Gun. And that just made me think, and a whole different thing. I hate how East Coast IPAs, that style, that caramel malt IPA, has been absorbed by the West Coast IPA style. And I know it doesn't matter. No one gives a shit, but I give a shit. And I think the East Coast IPA style should come back. Hop of the Muffin, which was our IPA that I loved, named after the Seinfeld episode, Hop of the Muffin, to you.
Top of the muffin to you.
Yep, exactly. But that was inspired by Highlight and Bell's Two Hearted. That was our mindset going into that beer. Let's take the best of both worlds and put it in there. And I'm just sad that that style doesn't really exist anymore.
It's funny you bring this up because like I mentioned at the top of the show, I'm drinking the Bell's Two Hearted variety pack or whatever. Because they have so it's Two Hearted. It's the hazy. Is it just called hazy hearted? I don't know. Whatever. It's the big hearted, which is the double, and then they have in there the change of heart, which is an East Coast style IPA. Is literally how they reference that. Which is first of all, you know,
Is it change of heart or change of hearted?
no, just change of heart.
But that's a fun name. I like that.
I know, but it is still for me to call it an East Coast style IPA. Again, also because they have hazy heart. But like for me, like so okay. Well, so for instance, so Bill's Two Heart. So I always talk about to people how like you want to know what Cascade tastes like, you drink this beer. You want to know what Centennial tastes like, you drink this beer. I don't know what some of these styles of IPA mean anymore.
Yeah, because East Coast used to mean like I would say like your 90-minute IPA, like a big malty
Brooklyn East Coast. I mean,
yeah.
Centennial
but
IPA by Founders was East Coast style.
Yeah, but then it seems like with hazy, people start. I heard people call it the Northeast IPA for a little while, East Coast IPA, and then it became hazy. So like,
Are you
hearing
seeing this? This is from Lagunitas. This is the beast of both worlds.
Before, haven't you?
I have, and it says East Coast flavor with West Coast clarity. The East Coast flavor is a hazy. That has become what East Coast is.
Will at Pompano Beach, he brews a beer called Purgatory, and it is absolutely phenomenal. I love it. I was there when he first started developing that recipe, and it's got the clarity of a West Coast, but it tastes like a hazy. And I love that beer that he does, and I really hope they're successful with it.
By the way, Kevin, I've had a hop gun within the last 6 months, and I feel like you would still enjoy it.
Oh yeah,
it's still very malt forward to me.
I wonder if this anniversary party in like a month or two.
I wonder if they still use Nelson. I mean, because that was like one of my big influences was using Nelson as a primary hop in there in the early days. Because when we started, we were using mostly like C hops, but it would be interesting. I feel like that beer has been very dumbed down in the hop profile. It's not as intense as it might have been when I was brewing it at the lounge, but who knows? Well, maybe Mike, you know.
I mean, I just it's a little from my recollection. I had one like someone had them at a birthday party that we went to, and they were like, "You're into beer? We got this IPA from Funky Buddha." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like I know I haven't had this in years." I'm like, "Yeah, malty, a little citrusy. Okay." I had a couple. Didn't taste bad, but it's not my thing on IPAs anymore. But I was like, I think Kevin would still dig this.
You're not a malt guy. We got it. Not for your IPAs.
I mean, like so as a guy who, like I said, Central Standard Time. I don't know how you define. Well, because like for a while there, we try to do like this no coast. I don't know. Like
I've heard Two Hearted called Midwest IPA before.
I've heard that
one of my favorite things that happened this year when CBC happened was SNPA winning like ESB or whatever the fucking category.
Were you
it
at
won.
CBC?
I didn't go to CBC this year. You know, I haven't been to CBC since it was in Minnesota, and
Philly next year. I'm sure Mike will make the trip. So
I don't how much
just
how
go to
many
Philly, not even CBC.
I was say
right?
how many different times can you go on the expo floor and see a brew house you'll never buy, or go to yet another breakout session on how hop utilization rates have declined? Like
I'll
I
go
do
just to
not give
visit
a
family
shit.
and then stand outside with a sign that said, "You paid too much to come just drink with your friends."
Ye-
I swear to God, that's what they all are. But no, I like the idea that this year, like we all like I've declared 2025 the year of fuck it, nothing matters. But like in a good way. Like I don't mean it in a bad way. It's more like I like the whole idea of, and if you're preconceived, like why? Why? Like, why should I give a shit about any of that? Like, I don't know. I'm old and I'm tired and I'm poor and I'm existential and I'm gonna lose my house. Like all I care about is like, you know what, man? Like, did you enjoy that? Was it really good? Did it enhance your experience? Like, don't get overly pedantic about so many things. Like, I literally recognize the irony of me using the word pedantic and shut up, Kevin. I already see the face you're making. Uh, but like, uh, yeah, like I don't know when I literally got this variety pack from Bell's, and they had a hazy and they gave me uh East Coast style IPA that's not hazy, but it's also not bitter and it's not malty, but it's still a lot like
Tim,
those
you
mid
sound
coast.
violated by this Friday pack. You just that's just really where what I'm catching on,
Show me
right?
where
I
the
mean, usually,
variety pack touched you.
yeah.
On the variety pack.
It
I
touched me in
mean,
it touched me in the heart.
I mean,
Mike.
I hope
honestly, like
so.
that.
It's hearted.
My favorite variety packs are the
All right,
Sierra
I'm done.
Nevada
Yeah.
ones at Costco. Those are the best ones.
Yes. But
I
my wife always grabs one when she sees them at Costco. She's like, I thought you would like this." And she's also a big IPA fan, so if she sees an IPA variety pack, she's like, "I would like to try some of these too."
They don't miss. They
Yeah.
don't fucking
they,
miss, man. Well,
Sierra
listen.
Nevada is still absolutely top dog. Like
Oh,
so many like just traditional styles and even non-traditional ones.
even to the beers that like they don't make anymore that I just wish they would, and like please bring these back because they're fucking fantastic.
When they did that fan favorite pack that was Ruthless Rye, Flipside
I
Red,
got that.
IPA,
Oh, it was
Nooner,
amazing.
and Tumbler Brown. That's
Let's
right.
let's bring back Kellerweiss. Let's bring back Porter. Let's bring. I mean,
Yes.
there's so many beers to bring back that they don't do anymore. They should do like an all-star voting. I know for a lot of us are Major League Baseball fans here. The all-star voting has opened up. They should do like all-star voting for the Sierra Nevada, like retro packs there. No, listen,
Yeah, well, be careful what you wish for, because we're gonna end up with fucking the Delman Young of Sierra Nevada, and we don't need that happening anytime soon.
Fun story for you guys.
You know Delman Young?
No, one of the shift.
I know
brewers-
Delman Young.
One of the shift brewers at Sierra Nevada's Chico facility used to clean kegs for me. So I always thought that was pretty cool that she worked her way from bartender down in South Florida to cleaning kegs and helping with stuff, and now she's brewing for Sierra frickin' Nevada. I mean, that's amazing. That's so cool.
Well,
really
you mentioned in your, when you were talking about your business, and Mike kind of highlighted it, the fact that like keeping these businesses open and the opportunities that they will give, hopefully, to other people. And I touched on that. I think talking about like what we should be looking at as success in a recent, maybe it was a last call. I can't remember. Sometimes I just talk here and then I don't ever listen back to it because why would I? But one of the things that I think is most prevalent in what your message has been throughout this, or the message I take away from it, is that redefining success and looking at our businesses both with we can do it with both with passion and with practicality.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
I think there's like this like punk rock idea that we just have to make the best beer forever and never sell out. At the end of the day, you know, the money that you put in, your personal money that you put in, wasn't from some billionaire investor that could just like, you know, write it off on his taxes. You
Right.
had to put that time and energy into it. And not just the money, but the time, the energy, the time away from your wife, your
Blood, sweat, and
family.
tears.
And we have to have all those things working together in harmony. So I have a great deal of respect for you, Adam, for the way you've approached this business. And also, as Tim's mentioned many times, your kind of humble aspect of looking at yourself and what you've done in the business. I think it's more of a mark of success, and what most people should be looking at it than just saying, I'm going to open a 20-barrel brew house and try to get into Publix.
Well,
You're way smarter than I think 90% of your peers, and I don't say that to blow smoke up your ass, but it's
thank you.
It might also just
I
be
certainly
an
don't
indictment
think so.
of it also might be like an indictment of like 80% of your peers, but like,
and it's 95% in South Florida.
Yeah. Well, 60% of the time it works 100% of the time. But kind of what Kevin was saying though was like you have had, you know, like, you know, you said earlier, we didn't know anything about running a business, and then you immediately point out, you know, key performance indicators. Like you do understand those things. You don't give yourself enough credit for the things that you've done already, whether that do for Bangin Banjo or just what you're doing today, or just your understanding about the general business, like the business and brewing scene. I mean, it.
As crazy as it sounds, like, you know, for not working for myself anymore, right? So like, I left Banjo, went back to the contract food service world in higher ed, took a quick sabbatical to be a city planner at Pompano Beach, went back to higher education and food service management and higher ed. And now I am
that old career arc. I feel like we've all heard this story a million times.
Hear me out here is that I'm now industry adjacent in beer, and the truth of the matter is I'm doing, like, I truly love what I'm doing. I really, really do. And like, you know, I get on calls with people sometimes. I'm like, great, we're this Ollie guy who probably doesn't know anything about anything, but I get to help breweries set up their Ollie accounts. And I mean, it sounds nerdy to say, but I geek out on that stuff. I really do. I mean, I'm helping you like set up your business. Like, that is so cool to me. Like, you know, let's get everything set up right. Let's get the attention to detail good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really, really, really want these folks I'm working with.
I don't get it, Adam. Nothing about you screams geek to me in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that you are literally on United Drink with probably the three nerdiest guys that you could possibly. So much of a nerdy podcast that Kevin has been very politely using a finger up to try to talk and interject the question, but he's such a nerd, he's not going to do it, and I'm not going to let him do it. I'm going to just keep on talking through and see how long he holds it up. Kevin, you had a question.
I just wanted to mention that I am currently working with Adam as a new Ollie customer, and he is onboarding me as we speak. Literally, we're recording this and tomorrow he will be meeting me at the brewery to go through the process. And that passion and interest in just other people's brands is palpable. You've displayed that from day one and the first time I've met you. And I think that is something that maybe Mike and myself and Tim and Joel and you know, other people who I have loved in this business, like, we do tend to get a little bit jaded, and we do tend to get a little bit negative. And when you bring people on this show or just are around people who really still love craft beer, even if they're in adjacent industries, it really is infectious. And I really appreciate it. It reminds me of how much I really still love this stuff when I try a new beer that Ralph has created and go, wow, we did this. It's a really, really great feeling. So I'm happy that you found a niche that can be parallel to something that you loved and still help people out and still have your interest be kind of scratched in that way.
Right. I mean, when you think about it, right, it's really easy to be jaded on craft beer right now. Whether you're a brewer, a salesperson, pretty much. I mean, there's very few roles in the craft beer world where I wouldn't, be surprised if you were jaded right now based on the industry. However, I think the industry was built on that passion and that emotion. And like I said, there's still a ton of breweries that are successful. There really, really are. And there are plenty of breweries that are growing. I think it's easy to forget why you're doing something when you're caught up with the noise and the business and everything that's going on, right? There used to be a joke, and I forgot where I said this, and people used to ask me back at Banjo. And I always had two lines for this that I said. I said, well, I brew some beer for me, and whatever I can't drink, I sell, right? And the truth of the matter is that I was brewing 95% of what I brewed for everyone else. And if I could just get one beer for me in that mix, I was happy, right? But the other piece of it is that I understand that I took a perfectly good hobby, right? Because I never worked professionally prior, but I took a perfectly good hobby and I ruined it by turning it into a business. The funny part, though, is that I like businesses and I like running businesses and I like looking at businesses and talking about business. So, for me, the brewing part is the part that was ruined, not the business part of it. And that's that silver lining there.
I get it. I think we all want to take a hobby and turn it into a business and do it smartly. Like I haven't been able to make collecting Hummel figurines into a lucrative career yet. But I think one of the things where both Kevin and Mike have lauded your acumen. It's not that you're the smartest beer guy they know.
Far from it.
It's not necessarily even that you're the smartest business guy they know. The reason why these guys talk you up is that you seem to have parlayed personally, like an emotional maturity or a very much a realism, right? So we talk about getting jaded in the industry. Jaded, you get jaded by having unrealistic expectations, right?
Yes, expectations versus reality,
Right.
all
And
day.
again, and we talked about that 3 barrel system versus the whatever. You just seem a lot more level-headed and grounded, and for all of the I've got text message threads with Mike and Kevin, with Mike and Joel, and we all like to get into the weeds of how everything sucks and everything is terrible.
Well,
And mostly we're just talking about Kevin. But the reality is you seem to have just maybe like pragmatic almost seems insulting to say. You just seem to have a very kind of maybe clear presence about what's going on, which is very refreshing for me personally.
And I agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. Mike, I think you also agree. Mike, I feel like you had a question like 12 minutes ago that you never got a
Mike's
chance to
been so
jump in
quiet.
on.
Yeah, I don't remember at this point. I just the thing that I have taken out of this that is so refreshing is the maturity in the way that you looked at your business. Like you didn't I mean, I'm sure that you had moments where you took things very personally and you treated it like it was an extension of your arm, and like how dare anyone try to cut it off. But like the way that you were able to, in really important moments, like get past some of those things and realize this is the thing that is best for me, the business, my employees, and so many other people, with such maturity is so cool. I mean, I'm I'm blown away. Like I have become a person who, in this almost 15 years of being in this industry, like started off very punk rock, in it. Like fuck the man, fuck
Yep.
that. Like I want to do everything that I want. Um, and like I feel like I can maintain some of that ethos, but also think about the workers and think about business. Like I'm not a person who belongs to a union, but I am so pro union for people, in all aspects of life, and think about the employees and the workers, um and think about like trying to create a business that is sustainable for all of those people, for the owners, and like it can all work together. And like holy fuck, hearing an owner or a former owner talk about like just generally good things for a business, is such a great thing.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry that I don't have the question that I probably had, but heaping praise at you is probably not something that you want to necessarily get, but I mean, it's such a refreshing thing though.
And to be honest, the praise thing is weird because I'm willing to admit that I'm smart enough to know that I know nothing, right? And they usually say people who are smart enough to know that, right? And I just know that, like,
What's it from
and maybe
Ozarks?
when I
I
was
don't know
young.
shit about fuck or
Exactly. So, but to me, it was just I don't know. I've just when you talk about ego and pride and all that, like I always like to say that, like, this industry is driven by pride, right? Like not even so much ego. Ego definitely comes into play, but pride, right? Think about Kevin and Tim, some of the first brews you did that in your area were like, one of a kind for a blink in time, right? When Barrel of Monks opened and you guys opened with a single, a double, a triple, a quad, like all the, to me, that was wild. I was amazed. I remember seeing your tap list in there and being like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like to me, that was just so fascinating and so cool. And I'd never seen anything like that. And given I've never been to Europe, but just, having your moment for a second. And, as a brewer, and again, I didn't go into banjo to brew, and I ended up brewing far more than I ever did. And, I've been joking lately that I've had an itch to brew. I just don't want to do the brewing part or the cellaring part. I just kind of want it to be a collab where I dictate everything and do nothing. I'll scoop
But,
for it, because I
but
could
by
use.
the way, there
you
is
take the
calamine
picture.
lotion for that itch.
Yeah,
For that
exactly.
itch,
You
there's
get the
Every collaboration beer ever, which works.
right. But the thing is that it's driven by pride to just perfect what you're doing, and it's really, really easy to see the brewers that are in it because they're playing against themselves, right? They're saying on batch number 72.5, I did this, and with the agricultural changes, and we bought Galaxy from here and this hop farm instead of this one, and and they're sitting there just fine tuning their recipes like a radio every single batch. It just, I'm so impressed by it, right? And I think that pride is important, in a lot of industries, but brewing specifically, because it is an industry driven by giving a shit. And it's so easy to not give a shit. It's so easy to be like, well, my mash temperature's off a degree or two. Who cares? Oh, we'll just rush through the knockout. Oh, I'm not going to check a gravity today. I'm too lazy. And who's going to tell? Who's it going to matter? But the truth of the matter is that your peers, that 5%, that 1% that could tell the difference between, hey, I pitched at a rate of 1.15 versus, 0.80, 85, 0.75 or whatever it is, like they'll know. And, it's a part of you, even though you're playing against yourself, keeps that in mind. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think the thing that's smart though, like, because I feel like I'm gonna know.
Kevin had his hand up.
Kevin has his hand up.
Oh, fuck him.
I just wanted to make a suggestion. I think oftentimes we get really deep in the weeds in our show, and I think what Adam just said was really important for all of us to kind of recognize. And obviously, Tim, I know all of us can go on a diatribe talking about that philosophy, but I'm just going to suggest, should we go into last call? Because I think that what Adam kind of put out there as our guest should kind of be the last thing that we kind of marinate on and go in and do our last call and do our last thing.
Fair.
My thoughts.
All right. So let's head into the last call. The point in the show where we give each other an unspecific amount of time to talk about whatever it is that we want. It can be beverage related or not. The only rules are that it is uninterrupted, unopposed, and unobjected. And with having a guest, we always allow our guest to go first. So, Adam, what is your last call?
So I want to preface my last call by saying that when I knew I was coming on here, this is going to be the most nervous part of this for me. And I had several different ideas that I marinated on, and I wasn't sure. Do I go funny? Do I not go funny? What it is, 2025 has been a rough year for me, and I have decided at this very moment the direction I will go with my last call. The direction that I will go is that I think it is just so absolutely important to just care right now about anything. It could literally be anything. It could be about your kids, your job, your neighbor, just care about one another, right? You never know what someone's going through. You never know what your coworker's going through. You never know, that person who's driving like an a-hole is dealing with. I just think it's so important to just give a damn. And it's so easy to not care, especially what's going on in politics and the world. And I mean, I feel like, you can almost apply this to any point in time, but I think that it's so easy to not give a shit that you almost forget how to care about more than the things that are critical to care about, right? And I think if everyone, just took a step back and said, you know what, let me just care a little bit more, turn that dial up 10, 15%. I think that everyone overall would just be in a better place if everyone just gave a little bit more of a shit, for whatever that's worth. So that's my last call.
Very nice. Kevin?
So I had something lined up for a last call, and I was scrolling. Unfortunately, I don't do a lot of social media stuff, but I was scrolling through Facebook, and I came across a post from the MLB where they had a gay Pride Month post, and I don't know what's wrong with me, but I scrolled through the comments of that post. Don't do that, by the way. There's nothing good that can happen from that. But what I saw in there, in that disgusting vitriol of people insulting, mute the MLB for 30 days. Why does this have to be in our face? Why are you doing this? Where's the heterosexual Pride Month? I know this is mostly people that are trolling, might be the best way to put that, but I know that some of this sentiment is a hyper intensified version of these arguments. for anyone who has listened to our podcast, you kind of know where the host of this podcast and where pretty much every guest of this podcast lies on the social and political spectrum. It's not a mystery where that happens. But I know that there are some people that I would call my brethren, my siblings, that still don't understand why Pride Month is a thing, because they still have this residual feeling of like, well, why do we have to celebrate this? Like, all the victories have been won. Gay marriage is a thing, and we've won all these battles. The fact of the matter is, there's a lot of people, and I'm speaking, by the way, as a heterosexual 40-year-old white cisgendered male. So I don't know anything, but I'm speaking to the exact person who might be a listener of ours that is still questioning why Pride Month is important. And this is what I have to say to you. It's important because heterosexual people have never had to be made fun of for their sexuality. They've never had to have their sexuality used as a pejorative to insult other people who were not homosexual, but because they displayed some kind of trait that was not popular at the time, they just got called gay. And that was supposed to be a bad thing. Pretending like that is not an experience that I have had and that people are not having to this day is absurd. It happens to this day in my kids' grade school. That's never stopped. It's still there. We need to show pride and be able to speak out about everybody's love and everybody's experiences. We have not lived in a society that has had marriage equality for the majority of many people's lives that have been around on this planet. And that marriage equality has not been questioned and fought at many, many different levels at different state houses for heterosexual marriage. That's why we need a Pride Month. We have not been in a position as heterosexuals to have a heterosexual Pride Month. We don't need one because the representation of gay marriage or gay people in media is never, ever, for heterosexual people, said about it's being put in their face or they're being forced to see it. It's never been called grooming to see heterosexual relationships on television like it is for any kind of gay relationship. So if you're on the fence and you're a person who is of sound mind and body and a thoughtful human being and you wonder why this still needs to go on, it still needs to go on because we're not even within spitting distance of where we need to be as a society in supporting and understanding just regular human beings and who they love and how they love. So that's the reason.
Cheers to that. Tim, are you there?
Yeah, I know. I just always hate following shit like that. Because my last call is to just say, no, honestly, my last call is probably less important to anyone who's listening, but more to me that is saying it. I very much appreciate the purpose that this podcast gives me, and I don't mean like this is my reason for living. Jesus Christ, if I had to bank my reason for living on Kevin and my be shoot up a creek. But what I do mean is that this podcast, first of all, it anchors me just as someone who's neurodivergent enough to not understand how to maintain a schedule. But what it does mean is that, like, man, for all the other things that are bullshit in life, which, like, let's just be honest, like 90% of life is bullshit. It is really nice to be able to know, to just rely on the fact that I get to sit here and talk over Kevin and talk over Mike while secretly trying to deny that I'm what they're really saying. But if I'm smart enough about my sassiness. They get angry enough at me for talking over them before they realize I'm learning. To listen to Adam tonight was one of the coolest things because it's awesome to have someone who understands the arrogance and humility that needs to happen simultaneously to be able to do anything in this industry. Because you need to be the smartest dumbass or the dumbest smartass or anything in between. And it's fun to learn. 'Cause, like we have had we've had so many people on this podcast or on other podcasts have been on Adam that speak from a position of authority that is bestowed upon them before we talk to them. Whereas with you have been able to talk to us, and I know this is the last call, so you're not supposed to respond. So thank you for not responding. It's refreshing, I guess, to take an old, tired industry and learn. And man, sometimes that's kind of all we need. So, uh Pacers and 6.
So for my last call, I'm gonna stay sport adjacent of sorts, and very recently, I don't want to pretend that I have watched this show in the last even 10 years, but Around the Horn on ESPN came to a close a couple weeks ago, and for a period of my life, that was a very important show to me. Like, PTI and Around the Horn was a show that I watched with my dad every afternoon in the early 2000s. And to see that show went on for almost 23 years, I want to give some little bit of tribute to Tony Reale with my last call, in the fact that I'm gonna play his role from PTI as being the corrections guy for this episode, and it's not even corrections; it's just adding context to some things. I want to talk about Delman Young real quick because he got brought up earlier. I did not realize this. He played for the Twins, the Tigers, and the Phillies all in a row. The teams of the three co-hosts. Very funny to see that. There is an excellent article that I had read weeks ago, but had to look it back up on VinePair from Evan Rail about Sierra Nevada's win of the ESB Gold at World Beer Cup, and about like changing of styles and how even like Liberty Ale from Anchor was an IPA winner before, and we wouldn't think of that today, but how Cascade is being grown in the UK and has been for a number of years now, and has been used in English beers, and having ESBs with Cascade in them is not a strange thing, really. It's a fantastic article. Please go to vinepair.com and look up that article. It's called How Sierra Nevada Pale Won Best Extra Special Bitter. I just wanted to add that stuff in there, and like this was all off I had no idea what I was going to do for my last call until at some point in this show. So really big props to Around the Horn for being an awesome show in sports for a long period of time, when it seems like sports TV shows can be just a flash in the pan. And go Phils, even though Kevin's team is the best team in baseball right now. Adam, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully you found it to be fun.
I had a blast. This was fun. I appreciate it. You guys showered me with compliments. I'm still trying to figure out why, but I do appreciate it because
Don't think too hard.
Adam,
Yeah,
if you were to hang out every other week with Kevin and Mike, you would be desperate to find someone that you actually want to respect. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know what that meant.
I'm not sure either. I do want to. I know this, guys. I know this is not we don't do this on YouTube, but I just have to mention that the entire time that Tim has been lurking in the darkness in his video feed, I've been thinking of Apocalypse Now and Marlon Brando. If you guys can see that at all, that's Tim. That's Tim. This entire episode right there. And it's given me such joy. Are you an errand boy? So I think we should go out on that note.
One more time, a big thanks to Adam for coming on the show. It was great to catch up for a little while. Haven't talked to him at length for a number of years, if that wasn't obvious enough. But we thought that it was a story that was really interesting, and we really wanted him to share that with all of you. So hopefully you all enjoyed that. If you want to follow our show on social media, we are at United We Drink on Blue Sky. We are also on Instagram at United We Drink Pod. We're on Facebook as well. If you want to support the show financially, monetarily, if you will, go to our website, unitedwedrink.com, and check out the Brands We Love page. Anything that you purchase through those links there goes towards helping this show and paying for our hosting. We don't make any money off of this. We also have shirts, buttons, stickers, and all of that other fun stuff at our web store, unitedwedrink.com/store. Other than that, we'll be back in a couple weeks with a brand new episode. Thank you, all of you, once again, for continuing to come back to this show. Or if this is your first time and you stuck around and listened to this and really enjoyed it, thank you to you too. Hopefully you come back again. We don't blame you if you don't. But other than that, we'll see you soon. Cheers.